So I'm going to call this meeting to order and at 5:30. And first, congratulations to Charlie and Peg for the election yesterday. This is the first meeting in Putney with 5 members, although we only have 4 right now. We're just
wonderful to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So while we're waiting for Josh, who should be here any minute, I just wanted to go over some election statistics because I think we did really well considering that this was a special election. Jonathan Johnson pulled together some statistics for me the other day, or actually today, about percentages in the last about 6 elections. So yesterday we had 511 voters. That was 25% of the registered voters came out to vote. On 3/22 we had 666, and that was 33%. And that was one of the days that we, one of the elections we sent ballots out to all active voters, which we did not do for the special election. We only sent out postcards.
Correct.
March of 21, it was 698 voters, and that was 35% of the electorate. Also, we sent all active voters ballots on that one as well. Our high point was 320, that was 910, that was a presidential primary year, and that was 45%. In March of 19, we had 335, and that was 16%. 318, there was no data. And 317, we had 283, which was 14%. So I'd say that, while it's not our high, it's definitely not our low. And for a special election, I think that was astonishing turnout. We'd always like to have 100%, but this was great. So with that being said, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
I have none. He'll be here momentarily.
How momentarily?
Like, he just got off the exit, so he'll be here momentarily.
All right, well, we can go on. The next piece is select board items. And the first piece of the select board items is election of officers. Now, if you two feel like taking over the chair position at the moment, I won't say no, but I'm willing to stay chair. I know that Josh is willing to stay vice chair, and Eric has said that he's willing to stay the clerk. So, unless anybody wants...
Alabama passes.
So unless anybody wants to change that, if somebody would like to make a motion to elect the slate of officers.
I'll make that motion that we elect the slate of officers.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded to elect myself as chairperson, Josh as vice chairperson, and Eric as the clerk. Do I hear any discussion? Is there any discussion online? Comments online? And there's nobody in the room. So hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Welcome.
Vice
chair.
We just voted you vice chair. Okay, that's okay.
No.
All right. Okay, so the second order of business is to go over the rules of procedure, review and approval. So these are the procedures that we use to run our meetings. Have you two had a chance to look at it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any discussion on these?
So is Wednesday good for you, Peg and Charlie? Because
Wednesday for...
select board meetings. Bi-weekly.
Yes.
The only issue I may have is that I'm on the Groundworks Collaborative Board in Brattleboro, and they meet every 3rd Wednesday of every month at 4 o'clock Sometimes it goes long. However, they've been having Zoom sessions all along. And obviously, and they usually end around 5:30. So if I continue to do Zoom with them, I can just bop down the hill to our meeting here. If it looks like they're going back to in-person meetings without Zoom, then I'm going to have to let you all know for particular meetings when I may be a little late because I would have to drive up from Brattleboro.
And that the third Wednesday,
It may or may
in
not.
theory,
Maybe
that'll
once in a
only
while.
be a conflict exactly a handful of times.
That's what I figured, so I mean,
If it turns into a problem, maybe
We
we
can
worry about
revisit it,
that.
yeah, okay. So it sounds for, like, in the meantime anyway, 5:30 every other Wednesday works for everybody.
yeah, and I don't want this to get in the way of business.
No.
If I'm a little late, I'm a little late.
Yep,
Yeah,
no, it's,
it doesn't need to, yeah.
and I think that's fine, as long as we have a quorum we can
Right.
conduct business, so. Was there anything else specific to meetings that we needed to make sure everybody was on board with? I think that was it, right?
Now, we're talking about the rules of procedure, or this is
The rules of procedure,
Okay.
yeah. So can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the rule or to approve use of the current rules of procedure as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the rules of procedure for the Putney Select Board. Is there any further discussion?
And we had already approved this at our organizational meeting, so it's really.
right,
if
this
there's
is just a continuation.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the main part
Yeah.
was the meeting times. We needed to
Yeah.
make sure those work for everybody. And also, this is the way that we try to conduct our meetings, so it's good to have new members
Right.
read through it. All right, so is there any further discussion? Are there any comments online? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the next piece is the conflict of interest, review and approval. Have you had a chance to read this one?
Yes.
Yes. Is there any discussion on this one?
I have a question. These, excuse me, rules appear to have been adopted on at the April 27th meeting, or is that today?
That's today.
That's today.
Were they adopted before this?
They were adopted, our previous, whenever we reorged the last time, they were adopted.
Right, is this something that was prompted by something, or is this routine
Every town-
year, every session or every year to adopt them once again?
Yeah, so every town must have a conflict of interest policy, and because it is very important for us to be above board whenever we can, we've felt that we need to have everyone review and sign it every year. And actually this year, we're also asking the boards and commissions, and committees to also sign it. It has come up in public discourse quite a lot recently, so we need everybody to understand what a conflict of interest is and how to resolve it.
So I had a question related to number 3, who it applies to. And that question was about, does it apply to the boards and the committees? So,
Yes.
okay. And where do they, is that in addition to who's listed here, or do they fall under one of these categories that are listed here?
Where are you?
Article 3, application.
So, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
This covers the statutorily appointed ones, so that would include DRB, planning, conservation,
Right.
and
Town
then,
Town
sorry,
clerk.
Town clerk.
town clerk,
manager.
right,
Town
yeah.
manager.
Then the others, and actually it's a good question, because the others, the other committees we have, for example, the Energy Committee is not technically statutorily appointed.
No, but they're an advisory
but
committee
to the Select Board. So I think in situations like that, and maybe, I mean, I don't think it's something we need to worry about right this minute, but going forward, we might want to have,
We could clarify it.
go, exactly. And
So the
whether
title,
they need to, I mean, we
Right.
would like them to abide by this policy, but if they're not
yes.
statutorily appointed, then they may not be legally required to, but
I'm having the committees all acknowledge
conflict of
your
interest.
conflict of interest policy.
Okay,
Because we did say 4 boards, committees, appointed and elected officials
Yeah.
in the title. So,
It's not as big a deal for the advisory committees to have some kind of conflict of interest,
right,
but it's still something that could come up.
recommended procedure, yeah.
right.
So, but you're right, we should probably clarify that at some point. Does anybody have any other comments?
The only other comment I have is, so this template, Peg, was taken from VLCT. So, and we just, adapted it to Putney.
The only other comment I would make is just, I think we always want to err on the side as being as transparent as possible,
Right.
needless to say. So, regardless of whether you have an actual conflict or not, if there's anything you even sort of remotely think, I wonder whether this is a conflict, just bring it up, just so it's on the record. And then at least it's been identified, and if somebody has an issue with it, it's less of an issue kind of thing. So, but I think it's just up to good judgment, really.
Yeah.
Is there any other discussion? I don't believe we've made a motion on this one yet.
I'll make a motion to approve. Because we did it. Make a motion to adopt the conflict of interest and ethical conduct policy for boards, committees, appointed and elected officials as presented.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the conflicts of interest and ethical conduct policy for boards, committees, appointed and elected officials. Is there further discussion among the board? Anyone online have any comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then we do have one more piece of business to get through. Karen, do you want to explain this one?
Sure, this is part of the American Rescue Plan Act process. There's a deadline of April 30th to do some reporting. And one of the questions is regarding the standard allowance. And I attended a webinar on Monday. There were 3,700 people in it.
Wow.
Yeah, what was that? Yes.
Just for the state or for?
No, it had to be the whole country because it's federal funds. And so I wasn't able to see who was online because they just don't allow that to happen. Anyways, the standard allowance, you only have one chance to take that, and it's during this reporting that's due on April 30th. And what that does, it allows towns that receive under $10 million to take the standard allowance. What it does, it streamlines the reporting process, and we can use it for government services. So if we have a deficit in our revenue, basically we can utilize that 734,000, whatever it is, and use it towards our operating budgets, if we choose to do that. It also alleviates the federal government from tracking all of it. So,
So it's a win-win.
if the ARPA committee, once it's formed, let's just say they have like 6 different projects, right? And the select board says, yeah, those are all great projects. So what we can do as a town, we can take all those projects and lump them into one, and we don't have to track everything. So it's just simplifying the reporting. And everyone I've spoken to, they're like, click, yes. So for us, it's gonna make our lives a lot easier. But for those folks that got more than 10 million, they're gonna have a lengthy process.
So you and I talked about this earlier, Karen, and you said you had drafted a.
Yes.
Yes.
Sure. So I'd like to make a motion that the town of Putney make the one-time irrevocable decision to elect the standard allowance approach for our ARPA award in the amount of $734,196.25 to spend on the provision of government services throughout the period of performance of the grant.
All right, do we have a second? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that the town of Putney make the one-time irrevocable decision to elect the standard allowance approach for our ARPA award in the amount of $734,196.25 to spend on the provision of government services throughout the period of performance of the grant. Is there discussion on the board?
Yes. This is restricted, this election of the 10 million to provision of government services. The reason I ask that is that I've done a little research on ARPA, and there are several categories of fighting for the word, projects that the ARPA money can be devoted to.
Right.
Government services, I believe, being one of them. But the town might decide, i.e. with the advice of the committee and our decision here, to devote some of the $730,000 to things in addition to the government services.
Yeah.
So that this $10 million election only apply to the government services project or benefit that that ARPA will provide.
So I asked the same question.
Did I just repeat what you asked?
No, I asked
I'm
it.
sorry.
I asked it privately.
Or previously.
And I wanted to make sure that we weren't boxing ourselves into a corner. And I have seen several emails come down my way from the LCT saying, take the standard allowance. So we got some documentation here, and it says that taking the standard allowance doesn't change the amount of your award, nor does it constitute an obligation of funds or a project. It just says we intend to use some or all of our award under revenue loss up to the standard allowance.
Thanks, that helps.
Yeah, so it's really, as Karen said, it's really more of a way to simplify the process for what the federal government probably considers small change.
Right.
And it gives us the option to spend it on government services
If we
need to. I mean, I think my sense is all of our sense has been that we want to really spend it more on projects.
Yeah.
But, for example, if we had something catastrophic that occurred and we needed to spend it on operating funds for all practical purposes, it would be awfully nice to be able to do that if we chose to.
Yeah, the thing too with this money, so it's COVID related. So, if we had a deficit
Right.
in our budget that we couldn't cover, we could use some of that money for that purpose. I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
Right.
But, 23, I don't know what's gonna happen in 23. So I knew 22 might be tight. But, yeah, I agree with Josh. I think, you know, creating the ARPA committee and coming up with some projects for the entire community and getting the community engaged is the first step. So, we're earning interest right now.
Cool. Good place to be.
Just
Like,
a
did you
quick
have a
question. Yeah, so if you don't take the standard, how are they calculating how much communities get based on per capita? You
Oh,
know?
they've already done that. So
Yeah, the numbers came out like last year.
Yeah, that's
So
why
I have that information, I can share it with you, Peg.
I was just curious.
I think it's per capita, it's.
I'm not sure.
There was a time when
It was
I had
messy at one
better
point
sense.
because they were
Yeah.
giving it to the county at one point.
Exactly,
Right.
And
yeah.
we don't
Yeah.
have any county entities, so the formula got changed halfway through the process, so they ended up with this number, which includes 25 cents for some reason.
Which is
Um,
much more than we anticipated.
Right.
Yeah, originally we were thinking it would be 230 or
Yes,
something.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so, and then it went up from there.
And we've already gotten half of the payment
That is
already,
correct.
so,
and that money is in a separate special fund at this point.
right, we did that.
And you'll see that next week.
Okay.
The other thing that I think the ARPA fund, the ARPA committee may be interested in exploring is that, you know, there's ARPA money out there right now, and I don't know whether our allotment of it is technically limited to this per se, or whether, because there are a bunch of different categories of ARPA funds.
Right.
So whether there are other quote-unquote ARPA funds that we might be able to take advantage of via grant opportunities,
We can.
or
We can.
even just other grant opportunities. But I think that if we optimize the amount of ARPA money, we
Yes.
can leverage it so that we can, you know, if, for example, we wanted to do an infrastructure project and we had X amount that we decided from ARPA, we could then go to Vermont Community Development or somebody else and say, hey, we've already got X amount and we're hoping you might support us in Y amount so that we can do our total project. So, you know, that's all going to have to play into how the ARPA committee discussion proceeds, is how to optimize other funds that might be beyond this.
We can also dovetail with other municipalities on bigger projects and share ARPA funds together. So we do have a resolution too for the ARPA committee. It has certain charges. It's online on our website, but I can certainly share that with you.
I think I've already seen it.
Okay.
So, further
So,
discussion?
what would be an example of municipalities working together and using ARPA?
Building-
Transfer station.
Transfer station, yeah, community center.
Yeah,
Right.
But also there are, I mean, we just applied for that grant for the equity and inclusion related, was that a grant? I can't remember.
It is a
Through-
grant, but we haven't applied for it yet.
But there are things along those lines, and again, there are a lot of different categories, but for example, training personnel kind of thing, you know, it might be that if we wanted to have the highway crew do something, we could team up with Emerson and Westminster, all have them do it together, and it would be funded, so.
Yeah.
I just needed to get confused.
There are a lot of options.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
a lot of webinars that you
And,
attend to try to figure it out.
and again, there's seemingly a lot more available out there, so we just need to
Right,
be
yeah.
as proactive about that as we
Yeah.
can, so.
I think we are gonna talk about ARPA a little bit more next week.
Yes.
Because we're gonna try to stand up the committee,
Yes.
hopefully.
Yes.
Um,
We need to get it started.
yeah. So is there further discussion on this particular motion?
No.
Are there comments online, public? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. We don't have other business on here, but I will ask the board if you have any other business.
Just as, sorry, I missed a few minutes, but.
We elected you vice chair.
That happens, I know how that.
You weren't in the room, so.
I've done it to others, so. Did you have an opportunity to thank the other select board candidates that had run and just thank these folks for
I
being
guess that,
here?
I talked
But
about
maybe-
elections, but yes, that's a good,
I just want to say, you know, I think that was I think we had a good democratic process for arriving where we are right now with 5 people in this room. And that I appreciate, you know, certainly the two of your willingness to put yourself in for this, but also just the fact that a lot of people were involved. We had 511 votes, I believe it was,
Yeah.
which for something like this is a significant turnout, so that's good. So I just want to say thanks.
yeah, it was
Big
interesting
part.
going around town on Tuesday. There were makeshift signs everywhere. There was people with signs around their necks.
Body
It was-
boards, yeah.
Body board, yeah, it was great. And it was raining too, so that's a lot of dedication. So yes, thank you to the candidates, and thank you for the engagement, the community engagement.
And to the Hubble for having a
Yes.
Yes, that was
for
also
having
really,
a forum.
really
Well,
good.
but the town did too.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, all around. I just think,
Yeah.
that's sort of what I'm saying. It's all around. I think it was a good process. And it doesn't always work that way, so it's nice when it does.
Any other business?
Make a motion to adjourn. Or do we have some, sorry, it's like jumping. the gun.
Does somebody want to second that? Okay, but before we do that, I just want to point out that our next meeting is May 4th, 2022 at 5:30 PM at the Town Hall.
Which is 1 week from today.
It's one- Yeah,
Yes.
And then we're every other
Every
from
other-
there.
Yeah.
every other Wednesday, unless there's a special meeting. We do sometimes meet on the off
Right.
Wednesdays for whatever reason.
And the reason we don't do the sort of first and third model, like Charlie was saying, is because we have to approve warrants every 2 weeks. So that happens regardless, and it, you know, most of the time it would work out anyway if we did sort of first and third, but this way we never have a lapse in signatures. Sorry.
All right, is there further discussion on adjourning? Hearing none. All in favor?
I
Aye.
All right.